In this episode, we will be discussing the state of the climate, what the data is telling us, and where we go from here to really enact change. We have a lot to tackle today, and a panel of heavy hitters, so let's dive right in.
I don't know, 350 is probably the most important number on the planet. We just didn't know it till 2008, when Jim Hansen and his team at NASA put out a paper saying 350 parts per million is the most CO2 we can safely have in the atmosphere if we want a planet, they said, similar to the one on which civilization developed and to which life on Earth is adapted.
From the standpoint of NOAA, and Bill and others have mentioned this, we support things like the National Snow and Ice Data Center that was just mentioned, a lot of activities that are related to measuring the pulse of the Earth. What's happening to ocean heat content, what's happening. We work a great deal on the so what kind of question, the types of things that Bill was getting to, which is, so what does this mean? So what if things are changing? How are we responding? Communication is really important, but fundamental values that people have are not simply changed through communication. It's changed through whether or not the awareness increases, but people have pathways for action as well.
We're trying to understand a noisy system while it's changing, and we know from a wide array of evidence, of observations, that the global climate system is changing, and that there are impacts that are already emerging in different regions of the globe. So this is there's really no scientific question about whether global warming is occurring. The question about what does the future hold is more complicated, because the future hasn't happened yet. In the last 65 million years, there have been periods where global temperature has changed on the order of 1 degree, 5 degrees, even 10 degrees, but that those transitions occurred over much longer periods of time. So tens of thousands of years, millions of years. So really the combination of rate and magnitude of change that's likely to occur if greenhouse gas concentrations continue to increase as they have is unprecedented in the last 65 million years.
With IceBridge, we're really collecting a lot of different kinds of data. LiDAR measurements of the surface, with different wavelengths of radar data that are actually penetrating the ice sheet and telling us how thick the ice actually is at any given location. It's a really great platform for science because, we're on these old P-3 aircraft, and they're just these amazing workforces, and you can put a lot of scientists and a lot of instruments in one place. In terms of what the data is telling us, I've been now to Greenland twice for this mission. I've been to the Antarctic once. And I don't really want to overstep my boundaries, but it was certainly clear to me from the first time that I went to the next time that the ice, as it is getting much thinner. Certainly in Antarctica, we get terabytes and terabytes of data every time we go. And a lot of it is housed at the National Center for Snow and Ice, the NSIDC. And if you guys want any of it, you are more than welcome to go there, put in a request, and they'll give it to you for free.
In 2009, there was this huge push to pass a cap-and-trade bill in Congress. It passed in the House, it never went anywhere in the Senate, kind of died off for a while. I think that conversation was really revived in June with President Obama's big climate speech that he gave that outlined some new initiatives that the executive branch is going to undertake, and also directed the EPA and other agencies to start doing more on climate change themselves. Most important being new regulations on power plants from the EPA that are in the works right now. So I think that's really revived the debate here in Washington to some extent.
You have been working on educating the public on climate and our impact on the world since, again, the late 1980s. Mm-hmm. I wanted to know, from your perspective, has this conversation gotten easier? Are more people actually understanding our impact? Is it getting harder? Can you speak to your perspective on that?
Yes, I think the conversation's definitely gotten easier. The data shows a huge spike in the percentage of Americans concerned about climate change. Now, I wish I could take credit for a lot of that. I did write the first book about all this, but in fact, I think it's Mother Nature that's really acting as the recruiting sergeant here. More than 80% of U.S. counties have had a federally declared disaster in the last 2 years. At a certain point, that opens people's eyes.
Trying to understand, what's the contribution of anthropogenic global warming versus the quote natural internal variability in the climate system to an extreme event like the heat and drought in the United States last summer, like Hurricane Sandy, Superstorm Sandy, the combination of events that led to that event. That's some really challenging science, and it's science that's in progress now. It certainly is in progress when the event occurs.
I think the extreme weather events that we've seen in the last few years have also pushed the public conversation forward too. So I think it's ripe to have a sort of deeper, more important discussion here in Washington again.
Everybody knows they should change their light bulb and ride their bike. By now, I assume most of the people watching this are doing it. But we can't make the math of climate change work just that way alone. This is a structural problem that will require a structural solution. The most obvious of those, which every economist has pointed out for decades now, is that the fossil fuel industry should not be the sole industry on the planet allowed to pour its waste into the atmosphere for free.
You know, it's easy to ask people to be proactive. I always tell people, let's be proactive, you first. and the idea with that is there's something upfront about that, right? So when we talk about communication and awareness, we know very well from the environmental record, from the experience we have on health, that communication and awareness only gets you so far. It doesn't necessarily produce action. And what produces action are a couple things, right? People that lead, partnerships, and awareness of something you were just saying, Andrew, which is why should I expect to be better off from doing this? And by better off, I don't necessarily mean just economically, right? But why the things that I hold important, whether it's things like salmon, whether it's protected areas, why are they as valuable to what I think is important in the future? When we resonate with those kinds of issues, that's when we've seen change over time.